So I just put the REPL link in the Telegram, so you guys can click on that. And then when you hit fork, you should start with this whole setup that we've got here. And then I'm going to need you to do 3 shells. So you're going to want 1 big shell on the left and then 2 little shells on the right. Because we're going to have a couple of processes that we're doing here. And I just want to get everybody syncing, and I want to get everybody's vault kind of like sort of set up. And then we're running this on MutinyNet, and for the vault actions, every time you try to do a vault action, it does a rescan. And when it rescans, it has to scan the whole chain. And so that can take like 2 to 3 minutes or whatever. And so what we're kind of going to do is when we start doing a vault action, then I'm going to take a sec to talk about what's happening, like answer some questions, talk a little bit about vaults, and then we'll see some updates as they start happening. Okay? So who's following along? Do we have REPLs up with 3 shells? It's in Telegram. So in BTC++, or you can go to replit.com/@fedi/opvault MutinyNet demo. So that looks like this. There. Can you read that? Or okay. And then once we're here, in the bottom right tab, you're just going to run Bitcoin D. And this has an already synced MutinyNet node in it. So when you hit enter, it'll just start. And then you'll see it syncing for a little bit. There we go. All right, so in the bottom right, you should have a Bitcoin node running around. Okay, good. Yeah, so in the bottom right there, just do your shell. Shell, okay. Yeah, or you can click next to it, where's the shell? Or shell, okay. Yeah, and then do Bitcoin D. So you got 1 shell here, and then you click plus right there. Type shell. There you go. And then up here, plus shell. It's all good. Cool. And then that one, you do Bitcoin D. There you go. Sweet. Oh, click stop on your console. And now do Bitcoin D again. There you go. Sweet. Cool. Okay. Yeah, Bitcoin D. Nice. Okay, you do fork and run. Yep. I got some people doing stuff. Yeah, so fork and run. And you're signing up. And you can follow on your phone too, if you want. Are you in? Okay, cool. Yeah, so once you get here, then yeah, you can just click X for that one. Then click stop on the top. Then do on the bottom right, see where it says shell. So you're going to do Bitcoin D. Cool. So now you're syncing. Yep. So Bitcoin D, enter. There you go. Perfect. And then you got your node syncing. Sweet. Okay. Cool. So everyone should be like that. And it should start with it basically synced. But the current MutinyNet block height is 1,143,579. Right. So it'll work your way up there. Okay. So now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a fees wallet, right? So with vaults, what's cool about using OPVAULT and the covenant system that it uses is that the kind of the whole vaulting structure is sort of like independent. And then when you want to move your vaulted coins, you attach the fees to it, right? So we're going to make a separate wallet that we're going to do that with, right? So for that, we're going to do on the top right, Bitcoin-CLI, create wallet, and call it fees. All right. There you go. Okay. So then once we have the fees wallet, then we're going to go over here. We're going to run Python main.py. And that's going to ask us to create a config. And so for that, we're going to do Python create config.py. And that will create our config for our vault, right? And so that's going to make two files. One of them is config.json, and the other one is secrets.json, right? And we'll go over that for a second. So, and once that's created, you'll see a config.json, right? And so this is like some kind of vaulty stuff that we'll go over in a second. So this is like a spend delay of 100. So if I want to move out of the vault, then I have to wait 100 confirmations to like do the end move. It's got like what the recovery pub key is, the recovery auth pub key, the trigger xpub, right? And so the trigger xpub is one that you would put, just like the xpub, you would put into like, I don't know, Blue Wallet or whatever on your phone where you want to like monitor whether or not things are moving out of your vault, for example. It's got some network stuff. And then if we go to secrets, all it has is the private key associated with your vault and then the recovery auth phrase, right? And so what we're going to do is if we want to move from the staging area to the recovery path, we're going to call recover and then we're going to put our password in, right? And what that'll do is it'll basically take your coins out of danger because they've just been stolen and they're sitting in the recovery, the trigger path for 100 blocks. While they're in there, the only place they can move is into this recovery path, right? And so we're going to do that in a little bit. But so now back in the shell over here, once we have the config, we're going to call Python main.py. And this is one of those commands where it's going to be doing a rescan of the whole blockchain. And so it's promised it's running. You're going to see something pop up in a second when it does that. Okay, cool. So we talked a lot about covenants this whole time. Who knows what a vault is? Okay, a lot of people put their hands up. Jesse, what is a vault?
There's like a time delay.
Yes.
There's a predetermined destination where they're going to go. Mm-hmm. And there's an opportunity to, before the time delay elapses, to sweep the coins back to the vault or put them somewhere else.
Yes, exactly. Right. So it's a covenant described in script. It's a very specific kind of covenant. And it's something that gives us a type of security that we don't have in Bitcoin currently. What is the type of security that a vault gives you that you do not have in normal Bitcoin today? So OPVAULT does let you set amounts, right? So that was one of the differences between OPVAULT and some of the vault options that Reared in Code went over, right? So normally with Bitcoin, you have proactive security, which is that I'm going to set up like a giant moat and a castle and like put alligators in the moat and like all this kind of stuff. And in the middle of this castle is going to be my private key, right? And all of the security that I have around that is stopping people from getting to the key. But once they get the key, they have my coins and there's nothing I can do about it, right? So I open up my phone that has an XPub on it or whatever for monitoring my cold storage or something like that. And one of these days, or like, you know, most people like, we shouldn't do that or whatever. They'll like go check their hardware wallets or they'll check their seed plate or something, right? Like once or twice a month or once or twice a year or something like that. And imagine you do that and you try to sign in and you try like put in a Sparrow or something like that, right? And you notice that your coins are gone, right? In Bitcoin today, is there anything that you can do if you notice that happened? No, because all of the security is proactive, right? Which is all of the security assumptions are based on stop people from getting to this to the key that I've set up, right? Okay, so the thing the vault gives you is reactive security, right? So somebody takes my key and they initiate the transaction in order to try to steal my funds. The vault delay, the spend delay, when your config file gives you 100 blocks where the funds are not actually in the place where the attacker is sending them, right? They're in a staging area. And the staging area is like the people broke into my castle, they took my private key, they initiated the transaction or whatever. I can go to my other castle where I have my other recovery key that they didn't break into, and then I can have it sent over there, right? So the attacker doesn't actually get my funds, right? And this is an extremely valuable type of security for certain types of use cases, right? It's probably not the most important for everything, right? But one of them is cold storage, right? So currently with cold storage, there is no reactive security. And in the event that you got hacked, you might not know about it until you next check your cold storage or whatever, right? One of the cool things about reactive security is you can set up really lightweight watchtowers, and those watchtowers can say, hey, we saw a transaction move out of your vault, right? You can do blinded watchtowers, all these kinds of stuff, right? So they don't necessarily know that it's associated with you. And then if the thing moves out of your vault, then you can say, oh, hey, that was me or that wasn't me. And if it wasn't me, then I can go do my whole thing where I do the recovery, right? And what's cool about this is the potential of basically making the big exchange hacks or the big, people losing their money that was in their cold storage, which they had some weird autistic setup for or whatever, right? Basically makes the idea of that happening just go away, right? Because every time it happens, they have something that they can do reactively, right? So someone tried to steal my coins. It's stuck there for 2 days, 7 days, 8 days or whatever, right? And during that period, all I have to do is just use my recovery auth phrase to initiate the recovery path. And now they're in a multi-sig, which I generated in a separate process than what I did to generate these keys. So these keys, when they were compromised, doesn't compromise the recovery auth keys, right? So think about it that way. The way that James O'Byrne likes to summarize it is OPVAULT gives you single sig operational complexity with multi-sig security. Right? So normally what you're doing is you just do a single sig for authorizations of moving the funds where you put it into the staging area, which then goes on to the follow-on destination after 100 blocks. But in the event that something happens, that immediately gets swept into the multi-sig, right? And so now in order to do actually steal your funds, they would have to go compromise that separated multi-sig, which is not the same as what you normally use, right? Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. So let's go look at this. So now if we go over, Why is it doing that? Because I don't have Bitcoin D running. Yeah, sometimes it disconnects, and if it disconnects, then just rerun the command. I posted in the Telegram. Okay, cool. So now if you guys look at your vault, the thing that'll say this is the watchtower associated with your vault, right? And it's going to spit out a couple pieces of information for it. So one of them is the fee wallet address, and the other one is the deposit address. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to deposit into our vault. So copy that address. Yeah, if you're just waiting, then sometimes it takes a sec as it's doing it, right? Again, it has to scan the whole chain, and MutinyNet's a lot bigger. The tool I'm using for this was designed for reg test, right? So normally reg test, the blockchains are a lot smaller, right? So here I'm going to deposit 100,000 sats. And eventually it's going to pick it up. Yep, there's a question. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you run Bitcoin D on the bottom right pane. You run Bitcoin CLI create wallet fees on the top pane. And then you do Python main.py on the left side. Right. And then, so I'm also going to need some money to go into my fees. So I'll take a couple here. Let's do 10K sats each. That one. This guy. It's kind of annoying. It has to scan the whole blockchain for it. That's okay. Cool. Awesome. So see here, it says saw new deposit of 100,000 sats, right? So that's my watchtower informing me, hey, you just had a deposit into your vault, right? And now it gave me a new deposit address. I'll put some more into there. Go here. And this is faucet.mutinynet.com. So you guys can just get a bunch of free coins from here. And Ben Carmen has 18 million Bitcoin on this, so feel free to take as much as you want. Right. Let's do another there. There we go. Got another deposit here. And then I'll actually send a little bit more in fees. Start over. Cool. Okay, so I've kind of got everything set up here that I'm going to need. So let's talk a little bit about OPVAULT specifically. So OPVAULT is kind of in the same vein of APO and CTV, where this was sort of like a brainchild of, we want covenants on Bitcoin, but people don't seem to want generalized covenants. So let's try to limit this down to like the tightest specific type of covenant for this thing that we can do and try to prove that it doesn't do all of these other generalized covenants. There's a couple issues with this. So one of them is that OPVAULT works really, really, really well with CTV, right? And so kind of doing OPVAULT without CTV has like a bunch of really negative side effects. And so you don't want to do OPVAULT without CTV. With OPVAULT and CTV, you can kind of do a Rindall sort of OpCat trick, but with these, but this time with OPVAULT and CTV in order to have a more generalized covenant, right? And so this is like another thing that we've kind of figured out in the last year and a half or so, that it's very, very hard to do these limited type covenants without opening up generalized covenants. One of the cases to make specifically for OPVAULT is that the general most popular thing that is happening with Bitcoin right now is store of value. And there are certain circumstances for store of value for Bitcoin where using vaults are a strict improvement. Right? And so that's the case to make for it. But you can get the effects of OPVAULT just like with L-Enhance. If you have CAT, you can like simulate it in a couple different ways. If you have OPTX, right? Like that, OPTX is, 0 implementation is CTV. So you like get the same functionality with this, right? And so, generally speaking, OPVAULT is kind of the simplest, most straightforward way specifically of doing this vaulting type of covenant, right? And that's like kind of the case for why you want it. Okay. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to initiate a withdraw, right? And so when we do this withdraw, it's going to go into the staging area. The staging area is going to be stuck there for about 100 blocks, and then it's going to have a CTV associated with it, which will send it to the follow-on location at the end of it, right? So for this one, I'm just going to try to send it back to the faucet. So I get an address here. And then I run Python py withdraw that. Oh, I need sats. Sorry. Let's do 30,000 sats. 30,000. Cool. And then this is doing another rescan, right? So it like takes a little while. Okay, so is everybody kind of in this same area that they've got the vault set up and that they're depositing from the faucet into their vault? You also need to deposit into the fees, right? Because again, when you're vaulting for these things, one of the issues with the way that you could currently kind of do vaults is using pre-signed transactions. When you pre-sign the transaction, you also have to guess what the fees are going to be, right? One of the cool things about OPVAULT is that the whole OPVAULT process is entirely separate from the fees. The fees you attach separately, right? And so because of that, you don't have to guess what the fees are going to be. And so OPVAULT is in the event that it's a high fee environment or in the event that you're creating it during a low fee environment or whatever, right? Like that's not going to affect it. It's only going to affect it at the time that you actually do the withdrawal or at the time that you do the recovery path. Okay. Cool. Okay, so we can see here that we just started a withdraw. And I can go look at this guy, right? And we can see here that there's been a submitted trigger transaction for that amount. And we can see that it has 1 confirmation and it has 99 to go, right? So our watchtower is telling us, hey, there was a withdrawal from your vault and this is still in the staging area right now, right? So I could go look on chain and see what that looks like. There we go. Right. Oh, wait, no. Sorry, that was the initiation right there. This guy. Yeah, so this is my on vault right here. Right? Cool. So it's still in this staging area. And you can see that the trigger has 2 confirmations, got 98 to go, right? And so this is a withdraw that I did on purpose, right? And so I'm cool with this. I just have to wait this additional period of time in order for it to eventually go where it needs to go, right? But now this is the really cool part of OPVAULT, right? Is that what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get wrench attacked. Is that somebody's going to come along and they're going to decide, because Ben the Carmen heard that I was taking all of his Mutiny Net Bitcoin. And so he comes along and he wants it back. And so he's going to compromise my keys and he's going to initiate a steal transaction. And he's going to try to steal 30,000 sats back. Okay? And so this is one where I didn't tell my vault that I did this on purpose, right? And so the vault is going to pick up, the vault watchtower is going to pick up that this transaction happened, and it's going to say, hey, you didn't tell me this was going to happen, so I'm going to tell you that someone might be stealing from you, right? So this is going to take another little sec. So everybody kind of on the same area? Yeah, you have to restart. That's fine. You just have to keep it restarting. There you go. Oh, you have to send more stuff to your fee. So, it might be just the number of UTXOs, whatever. Withdraw L. That's the wrong. Okay, yeah, so that started it, right? Oh, okay. That might be an issue. You can kill the config and then you can recreate the config and just redo the vault. Okay. Cool. Okay. So, crap, insufficient fees. Oh, I got the same error. That's okay. All right. Yeah, well, that's okay. Now my vault doesn't seem to be working. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to freak out and I'm going to do in.py recover. Right. And so because everything's in the staging area right now, right, the only path that it can go through in order to get out of danger is to go down this recovery path. Right. And I can still do this because it's in the staging area. Right. And we'll look at the transaction for it being in the staging area. That's the same amount. 3424, 3424. Okay. So everybody kind of have their wallets sort of set up, sort of working. Oh no, it's still running. It's just that it has to run rescan every time it does it because this is normally a reg test tool. But it has to rescan the whole thing. So the withdraw, you'll see it pop up. Okay, cool. You have something there? Got it running? Yep. Okay. Cool. Yeah, like 30,000 or something. Or you can do steal 30,000. It does the same thing, but one of them sends a notification, one of them doesn't. Cool. Yeah, you can just run main.py instead of monitor. It'll do that. Cool. Is your Bitcoin node running for this? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. So if you look on mine, so see how it says, hey, recovering all these sats, right? So these are the outputs that are in the staging area that I'm going to recover by doing this. And so what I'm going to do is go look in my secrets.json and use my recovery phrase. There we go. Sweet. So I just initiated the recovery transaction. So let's go look this up. Cool. So that's my recovery transaction. Okay, so we can go look at this. We'll go through this one a little bit later, like actually looking through the witness of what went down here. But yeah, that's my recovery transaction. So you should see over here in a second, vaults recovered, right? And this goes through my coins that were in the staging area that I then did the recovery for, and now it pushed it into the recovery wallet, right? So now this recovery wallet that I have, that could be like a 3 of 4. It could be like something where I've set up with like lawyers and other custodians and all that kind of thing or whatever, right? It's like an opportunity for, this is the one where now that it's safe, I have time and I can go around and I can say, hey, this is my like 6-week plan where I go to the 12 different countries where I've stored all my different key shards or whatever, and then put it all back together. But the important part is that I got a notification when my coins were getting stolen from me. There was something I could do about it, which is the big change, right? Is that today, once you get hacked, there is nothing you can do, right? And so in the event that that happens, I can immediately put myself into a position where in order for the person to actually successfully steal from me, right, they would have to compromise this giant crazy thing that I've set up for the recovery. But on a day-to-day of just using my like normal single sig, right, I'm totally fine as long as I'm okay with this spend delay. Right? And you can think about how, like with more generalized covenants, how you could do much more complex schemes than this, right? Like you could have like multiple different recovery paths. You could have like recovery paths that fail over after certain amounts of time and all that kind of stuff, right? But just the generalized principle of this that I really think is important for this is that currently within Bitcoin, there is no reactive security, right? And the vault is the very simplest way that we can get reactive security such that all of the horror stories that you've heard about, oh, I lost all my Bitcoin, right? That basically stops happening, right? Because people, like, if your key gets compromised, they have a recovery path where they can go to like a much more complex thing that they don't actually have to deal with like all that often, right? And it's very valuable to kind of keep this in mind of like a improvement on the most common thing that people do with their Bitcoin today, which is they hold it, right? Okay. That's kind of it. We can go through like the specific scripting or whatever, but like we went through most of that with like root and code, but we can ask about that a little bit, but yeah.
If vaults become very common, does this change the how we should think about private keys? Like, is it that bad to have your keys in Google Drive now? If there's always
well, it's still bad.
Seriously,
yeah, it's not nearly as bad. It's like the issue, like there's a couple issues right now in Bitcoin, right? Where like one of them, for example, is that for your Lightning node, is that the moment that your Lightning node pub key is doxed, like you're kind of doxed forever, right? There is no changing your Lightning key, public key, right? The other one is if your key goes hot, right? That is basically compromised forever for any of your cold storage or any of this stuff, right? And normally is that if you want to have like a good setup for your cold storage, you want it to be multi-sig, you want it to be those things. There's a bunch of operational complexity associated with that though, and like, hey, sometimes I want to move my funds out of the way, but like I don't want to have to go do the round trip to like the 12 different people in the 12 different countries or whatever in order to make that move, right? So you as the primary operator of the vault, right, as long as you are okay with the spend delay, and the spend delay can be 100 blocks, it can be 1,000 blocks, it can be 10 blocks or whatever, right? Like, as long as you're okay doing that, then you, on a day-to-day basis, have single-sig operational complexity, right? Which is that I decide that I want to move my funds to this place, right? But you get, in the event that you're compromised or in the event that something happens, you get the security of the multi-sig, right? And so I think wallets generally are going to, like, they work really well today with like one or the other, but this is like a good way to have just mostly single-sig operational complexity, and then in the event that something bad happens, you sweep it into a multi-sig. So, for example, one of the ones that I think would be really valuable for this is using this for FediNets, right? Because normally what FediNet does is has a hot always-on wallet, right? Is that when you're doing withdrawals from the FediNet, is that the keys are basically like always running these consensus rounds for the FediNet, right? So now imagine if the Guardian, who actually has to, instead of have to always be monitoring the node and always have to be checking with the other Guardians for all these other things or whatever, what if, hey, we did this, right? We did this withdrawal, this sort of thing. And what we can do is the moment that something bad happens, then we put the stuff into the recovery path. The Guardians can, at their own time and at their own leisure, figure out what happened. They can like do a recovery for that one. Because anything where you actually have to have the keys hot is like in the event you get hacked, you're just screwed right now, right?
So, but I mean, you have to do another transaction to get it out of the trigger.
Yeah. So basically, the fees associated with the fee that you attach to it, right? That gets kind of bumped when you do the replace by fee for it, right? So it's like, hey, this one has a CTV to do to the ultimate withdrawal path over there, right? And you have to get your transaction confirmed while it's still in the staging area, right? But again, the staging area, it can be 100 blocks, it can be 1,000 blocks, it can be like something like that, right? So you do have to get that transaction confirmed, right, after it's been moved out. But what you can do there is you do it and it goes into this recovery path. And like, again, the recovery path, you can make it as complex as you want, right? And you can make it so, like, you know, you've got the different seed plates that you're like buried in the ground in 12 different countries or whatever, right? It's just like currently, if you do that, those coins are not moving at all, right? Like you don't get to, hey, I need some of my funds to move it to this other thing, or I need to put a little bit more in there, right? But like now with this, you actually do get that, right? And so in the event that something actually did happen, you do have the multi-sig security at the very end of it, but you still have the possibility, like if I'm operating a business or whatever, if I'm operating an exchange, right? Like, you know, there's like certain like Bitcoin exchanges where the CEOs are like, hey, I go to sleep like terrified every single day, right? It's like, what if I wake up and something's happened? But with reactive security through vaults, suddenly it's, hey, if something happens, there's something I can do about it, right? Which is like a huge change the way that this stuff works. Yeah.
What does the criminal see?
What does the criminal see? So you initiate a transaction, right? And you tell your vault that was me, right? So the criminal, if they compromise your key and they initiate their transaction, right? If you're using a watchtower, then the watchtower notifies you and you're like, oh, hey, that wasn't me, right? But if you're not using a watchtower, then you do have to like check in on it every once in a while, right? But just generally, like watchtowers become super, super easy to do once you have something like this set up.
What if the criminal tells the watchtower that it was you?
So for that one, you'd have to compromise both your watchtower and the private key. Okay.
So like in your demo here, you had like a Python withdrawal, right? What if the criminal just did Python withdrawal?
Yeah. So the difference is when I do withdraw versus when I do steal, right? There's two things that are happening. So when I initiate a withdrawal myself, I'm also telling the watchtower, hey, that was me.
Right? How do you authenticate to the watchtower?
Yeah, so I mean, it would depend on like the setup that you want to do, right? But like, you know, you can do it like, hey, I've set it up on my phone, but it's separate from the actual like usage of the private key. You can have them separated on different apps, whatever it is, right? But like, or you can just have it not be that way at all, right? It's just like because the reason why I have the authentication or whatever is so that it doesn't like send me all of those notifications of like you've been stolen from, or whatever, right? But you can have it that way. Just the watchtower, it tells me about everything, right? And so even if it's me or even if it's somebody else or whatever, I just get a notification every time something moves, okay? So,
and the criminal themselves, do they see that they failed? Do they know they didn't support it? They just see like,
well, the only way to move the coins is to put it into that staging area, right? So the criminal sees that, hey, I initiated this transaction sending to myself, but it's a follow-on transaction after it's been in this place for 100 blocks, right? So they do the first transaction that puts it at 100 blocks, right? And so they see it, they'll see it waiting there,
right?
If they were to do that.
You just answered the question, which was, in order to use the funds in the vault, you have to wait that time.
Yes.
So 100 seems like a long time to wait when you're trying to make a regular payment.
Yeah.
But 1,000 is even longer. So you should pick that time carefully to be both acceptable for your normal business operations and
exactly
enough time.
If you like going sailing the ocean for a week at a time.
Yeah, right. Well, this is so like I think the most functional thing about this sport, right, is just like think about it if like you've actually done like a cold storage setup with a multi-sig that's split across multiple people or whatever. Like how long would it actually take you to go do that multi-sig recovery? And like that's what you set it based off of. Like take that, double it or whatever, right? And so like I know for me, right, like I've done setups or whatever where it's like I would need to talk to 7 different people, right? and so I like generally those coins never move because I do not want to go talk to these 7 people, right? And when I just want to do a normal transaction, I don't want to have to go tell them about it or whatever, right? It's like just coins that I've just set up and I do not move them under any circumstances, right? But like now what I could do is I could just individually as an operator do that. And for when you're setting up these multi-sigs or whatever, right, is that you're just using multiple keys from different people, right? So like imagine you're a cosigner on like 15 different people's vaults, whatever, right? You're just one of those many cosigners.
Yeah, and in practice, you could also have something more complicated, like not just have the vault like this, but you could have something like where like you have another set of multi-sig wallets where you can do an emergency.
Like that normal spend that you do or whatever, like you could use Frost or something, right? And so it's like, hey, normally on a day-to-day basis it's a 2 of 3, right? But like in the event that the 2 of 3 is compromised, then it goes into like a 7 of 12 or something. Or, I don't know, like whatever you want to do. But like the whole idea behind it, right, is that you have separate key generation processes that never touch each other. One of them can be like crazy, like you don't want to do, something that you like takes a while to handle, right? But the other one, just for operational simplicity of like, this is funds that I will actually be using and like moving from one thing to another or whatever, doesn't require me break glass in place in case of emergency or whatever. But I always have that option, right? Yeah.
If your recovery phrase is wrong, what would happen?
The recovery phrase is basically hatched into a private key and then used to sign a transaction. So you do need to like maintain the recovery key.
I want a little more attribute than that one.
Yeah, you don't. That's why it says change me, right? Yeah. So, but the whole idea behind the password or whatever, right, is this is just like a hey, like stop everything, just throw it all in that vault, right? And so what you want to do is you would want to be something where it's like, hey, you get the notification, it's like from your phone, you can just like put the passphrase in, go. Now it's suddenly in a safe place, right?
So there's an annoying attack. Someone steals the recovery phrase and then just...
Yeah. So let's say that somebody does that or whatever. They take the recovery phrase, and now you do that. But like the important part about it is that they don't have your coins at the very end, right? And like that's, I think that is just a fundamentally different paradigm than the one that we currently live in, which is that a successful attack today means you no longer have your coins, and there's no recovery mechanism at all, right? And so just imagine what Bitcoin looks like if after 5 years there has never been a serious attack that ended up with someone losing all of their coins, right? And like the case that you can make to institutions, to custodians, like all that kind of stuff. Like even today, right? It's like you look at the ETFs, like Coinbase is like the only custodian. There's like Fidelity, right? Just because there's like a couple of Bitcoiners there. But like the other guys, I don't think the reason why, like they do custody for like all sorts of other stuff, right? Like why not do it for Bitcoin as well? It's like I think there's serious problems of not having reactive security for this one. Is that the reactive security they have in the dollar or whatever, right? Is that they just go to the Fed makes it right, or you get the coins back, or you get the funds back. But for this one, it would be, hey, there is a mistake, there's something like that. This goes into the craziest multi-sig cross-institutional party with service level agreements that you possibly set up, right? And then now it's like no one ends up actually using the coins, right? Which is pretty huge.
So I get this being super useful for someone stealing your passphrase, but for a wrench attack, doesn't it make it more dangerous?
In what way?
In the sense that if I try to steal your coins, I only have to wait roughly 10 minutes to figure out that I have control over them, and then I can fuck off.
No, so you wrench attack me to get my private key.
Yeah, I wait for 10 minutes, verify that I received them, and I go on my own way.
No, so
but in this case, right? I have to wait for 100 blocks. Like
yes,
I try to
100 blocks, and if, for example, like
the watchtower says,
if the watchtower, like for example, one of the things you do in the watchtower is that if I don't send you an authorization for having moved this money or whatever, just auto send my recovery, right? And so now we'll just sweep everything out of there and then put it into the recovery path.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So again, it's different sets of trade-offs, right? Of like, hey, well, like you were saying, right? That like, what if somebody gets a recovery phrase or whatever, then they like screw you over or whatever. But like the categorical difference for this is that at the end of this attack, who has the Bitcoin for this? And there's very, very few ways of engaging and attacking against someone who's using a vault in some sort of reasonable way that doesn't end up with them having the Bitcoin at the end of the attack, right? Versus today, which is if you are attacked successfully, you do not have your coins, right?
But if they know that you've got it in a vault,
that was kind of like
doesn't the wrench work still?
Yeah, well, in certain ways or whatever, right? But it's a different type of attack, right? So let's say you actually wrench attack me or whatever, right? And like for me, just just like, again, like I've got some pretty complex setups or whatever, right? Like my recovery path would probably take me something on the order of 2,000 blocks, right? So like you wrench attack me, and now at any point during the next 2 weeks, right? Like let's say that, hey, I've got like a friend who's concerned about me or whatever. He has my recovery phrase or something, right? Let's say that I have a watchtower. Let's say that I have a lawyer or something like that who has the recovery phrase. And in the event that like I don't have like a proof of life in like 2 weeks or something like that, right? They can just do the recovery path, right? And they can initiate that transaction.
Of course, if you've given them all the information to get your complex
but for them, in this example, for one, it's like, hey, just one of these guys just has the recovery phrase, right? Like,
right, but let's say they wrench attack you and kill you, right? Now,
well, I mean, if I'm dead, then my coins are dead. Right?
You might want them to go to somebody else.
Yeah, and you could do that, right? And this is where like the more general covenants and the complex scripting comes in, right? So it's like, hey, you put something in a vault. The vault is only like time locked for like, hey, 1 year, and after 1 year, it just fails over to being directly recoverable by the recovery path or whatever, right? Instead of having to do the staging area. Like all of this is possible, right? But I think again, like categorical difference between at the end of this attack, I lose all my coins versus at the end of this attack, I have a very good chance of still having my coins at the very end.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, like a more realistic, so the $5 wrench attack is like fun to talk about because it's funny, but a much more realistic attack is like you're at a company and then you have a cyber attack and then keys are compromised.
Yeah.
And like then this is completely applicable and it completely protects you.
And this has happened like a bunch of times, right? Is that like if your key gets compromised, all of your coins are gone and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Versus having to compromise many different sets of keys which have never been in the same location that has many different backups associated with these things just out of the box, right?
It's like two-factor authentication.
Yeah, and like the blinded watchtowers associated with this become really, really, really powerful, right? And so, yeah.
Is there a limit on the time delay?
With OPVAULT specifically, or no? I don't think there's any limit, but you set it by block height, right? And so, well, relative. You check the relative block confirmations.
A couple billion blocks.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we do that, right? But
Last question, and we got it.
yeah, sure. Any questions?
So how do you implement this?
Well, this is based off James's work, right? So I just kind of modified it a little bit to do MutiNet instead of that one. But this is currently live on MutiNet, right? So you can do bulk transactions for it, right? And the scripts associated with doing this are in the bit. And the scripts look like this, right? There's like trigger op, spend delay, op CSV, op drop, op CTV, op vault, right? And so, and the code for it is all in the replit, right here, and it's just written in Python, right? So it's like pretty variable. Okay, cool, thanks.